When it comes to the topic of video games, I can't say that I was introduced to the industry in its earliest stages, since I was not even born back then. Therefore, I did not experience any of the genre-establishing titles like the original Doom, the Half-Life series, or even the original GTA trilogy, with me playing such games as GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas for the first time only in the early 2010s. Nevertheless, I do believe that I managed to enjoy and appreciate Vice City and San Andreas to the fullest by the time that I was able to play them. Perhaps my personal experience and thoughts on this beloved series of mine deserve another separate video, yet the focus of this one will be primarily on another video game to which I was introduced in the year of its release, that is, in the year 2012. And so, I introduce to you Dishonored, the story of my favorite video game. The year was 2012. I can't say that I spoke any English at the time, so practically all the content that I was watching was in Russian. I was into watching that one guy who played only Minecraft prior to that moment, and I was pretty surprised when he uploaded the first video of his Dishonored playthrough, at the beginning of which he said that he fell in love with this game so much that he decided to upload a whole playthrough of the game despite his channel being purely Minecraft oriented. So, since I basically watched every video from the guy, I started watching his Dishonored playthrough, and right now I'm trying to reflect on my first impressions, which were somewhat different from any game that I played or watched prior to Dishonored. To me, the game had this sort of aura around it, this mystery which was strongly supported by the game's soundtrack, the setting, and the way the game itself was meant to be played. I was pretty much captivated by this playthrough, and by the time it finished I had that feeling that you get when you finish reading or watching something that you really enjoy. That feeling of completion and sort of emptiness, because you realize that there's nothing more to it and this is the end. Yet, unlike with some pieces of art, be it literature or a movie, I soon realized that this game was meant to be replayed, and I understood that my playthrough would have been different from what I just had seen. Nevertheless, based on various reasons, one of them being that I did not have a computer at my full-time disposal at the moment, I didn't have a chance to play the game for the next half a year or so. But then one day, I finally got my hands on a copy of Dishonored, launched it for the first time, and immediately, straight from the main menu, I was surrounded by the steampunk aesthetic and atmosphere of the Victorian era. Starting from the main menu, we are given a sneak peek into the world of the game, with one of the in-game locations serving as a main menu background. The soundtrack is also spectacular, giving us a sense of the unknown, some mystery that we're yet to solve, perhaps never to its full extent. I jumped straight into the game, and that's how my personal story with Dishonored began. In short, it took me quite a while to finish my first playthrough, since I was new to the genre of stealth action video games, which turned out to be one of my favorites by now. I completed the game with the worst possible ending, as I did not spare anyone during the playthrough and still struggled at times with not being spotted and surviving the fights I had to partake in. Okay, so I finished my first playthrough, and I think I can't say that I was very pleased with the way it turned out, as the ending itself was pretty dark and the attitude of all the characters towards me was rude and judgmental. I gave it a few days and set myself a goal of doing my best not to be spotted and to spare as many people as possible. Oh, by the way, I think it's necessary to mention that the game has 3 endings: the best one, the neutral one, and the bad one. As you can already guess, the ending basically depends on your cruelty, that is, either sparing, neutralizing, or killing everyone in sight. There are also non-lethal options of eliminating key story targets that we're going to have to deal with during the playthrough, and at times finding the way to eliminate them without killing can be challenging, as it may require you exploring the location and finding the exact things, objects, or people which would help you with that. Thus far, my description of the game has been somewhat chaotic, and I'll do my best to give a brief explanation of the crucial elements of the game, which are the plot and the gameplay. Speaking of the plot, the game is set in a fictional world in the Empire of the Isles, in an era which has Victorian elements of architecture and culture and some parts of the steampunk industry. The plot is set during the period of the plague, which can be correlated to the 14th century Europe. The main source of the plague in the game world are the infected rats, which move in swarms in the city streets and in the canals and pose a threat to anyone in their sight, including the protagonist. Speaking of the protagonists, we play as Corvo Tano, the royal protector of the Empress Jessamine Kaldwin. We will touch on other characters once we encounter them during the playthrough, as pretty much every one of them deserves a more thorough description. One key element of the game, and the entire Dishonored series at that, is the missions. There are 9 main missions in the main game, which may not seem as that many, yet all of the missions locations are pretty much hand-built and designed to be replayed, as there are at least several approaches to your destination, some less obvious than others. While on your way to your destination, you will encounter various loot, enemies, and at times some allies. Now I'm going to run the footage of my recorded gameplay, and we will talk more on the characters and some other crucial gameplay elements once we encounter them. When we load into the new game, we first hear a message from the Empress to Carvo.
Corvo, if only there was someone else I trusted to send, so that you could remain near. But there is no one else, and the Spy Master was right to insist that I send you. The plague has taken so many, and we must find a cure. When you are near, my heart is at peace. Emily and I will count the days until you return. Hurry home, and bring good news.
So pretty much what we as the protagonists were doing was going on other isles in order to seek help with the plague, and we will learn about the success of our expedition in a little while. While on our way to the tower, we may see a ship carrying a whale. You see, the industry of the world of Dishonored really depends on whales, as their oil is being harvested and held in tanks used to power all technology like electricity. The oil tanks themselves pose a major threat to the player though, since they blow up and kill you instantly should you decide to shoot at them in close proximity or try to destroy them with your blade. Now the same applies to your enemies, so you may use the oil tanks to your advantage to deal massive amounts of damage. We have finally arrived, and now we are on our way to the gazebo where the Empress is waiting for us. So now we have met another crucial character of the game, which is Emily Kaldwin, a daughter of the Empress Jessamine, her only child and the heir to the throne of the Isles. Speaking of the father, this may come as somewhat of a spoiler, yet I do believe that we are not going to learn this information during the game. The father of Emily is the protagonist, Corvo, the royal protector of the Empress. As you can guess, this fact is kept secret by both the Empress and Corvo, yet still there are rumors among common people and in a close circle of the Empress. Emily offers us to play hide and seek, which serves as a tutorial to the stealth mechanic, hiding and peeking from behind the corner. The tutorial itself is pretty basic, and I'm only doing it for the sake of covering every aspect of the plot. We meet Anton Sokolov and High Overseer Campbell on our way to the gazebo, with Anton painting a picture of the Overseer. There's a little Easter egg, which involves taking the bottle from the table next to Campbell, and as a result we get a response from Anton. Now, Anton Sokolov is the head of the Academy of Natural Philosophy and royal physician to the Empress, but the main thing that we should know is that he is working on the elixir from the plague and already has his own self-titled health elixir, which both the protagonist and other characters use in the world of the game. We will come to the High Overseer in a moment, but for now we shall proceed to the Empress. We catch her mid-conversation with another crucial character of the game, which is the Lord Regent. We will touch on him in a moment as well. For now, all I can say is that he gives off a pretty slimy, up-to-no-good vibe. So yeah, the news is that none of the Isles agreed to help us with the plague, and we will have to deal with it on our own. And there's the plot twist. 3 assassins who seem to be able to teleport and also possess some other magic kill the Empress before our eyes and kidnap Emily, leaving the place with Carvo ending up in a pretty sticky situation. Conveniently enough, with no one else on the crime scene, the 2 most slimy looking guys blame us for the murder, and we end up in the next location, which is Caldridge Prison, where we'll have another pleasant conversation with them.
This is your final chance, Corvo. Sign the confession, and let me give you the rights to put your spirit at ease.
That's enough for now. Get out. Let's give the man some time to think. Corvo, the Empress is dead. Her daughter Emily is hidden away, and no one will ever know the truth.
Yes, unlucky you. Tomorrow you'll be executed, but it's for a good cause. This country needs strong leadership now, someone to guide the weak, and that's where we come in.
There was nothing personal in this, even though you almost sank our plans. But it turned out well. You were in the wrong place at the right time, and someone has to take the fall. Goodbye, Corvo. Guards! Take him back to his cell.
As you can guess, the entire thing was a setup, with the High Overseer and the Lord Regent being the masterminds behind the assassination of the Empress and the kidnapping of her daughter. Now we wake up in a prison cell with the guard giving us some bread with a hidden letter and a key for our cell hidden beneath it. Well, I kinda wanna keep my head on my shoulders, so I think I better go. And here's our first encounter with real enemies. And from this point on, it is up to us to decide how we wanna play this out. I've decided that I'll go with the non-lethal stealth playthrough, so I'll leave the more brutal version of the gameplay to your imagination for now. Something which I haven't talked about before is that there's a mechanic of picking up and hiding the bodies, with us being able to put or throw the body wherever we want, potentially even killing the person if we throw them from a high enough place. I'll just hide this one in my cell and proceed without touching anyone else here. On our way through this location, we can pickpocket the guards, granting us some coin, which is a currency used for purchasing various ammunition and upgrades for our gear later in the game. One thing that you should know is that in practically every mission, there are hidden spots with some valuables which grant you more coin, meaning more money for upgrades. When speaking of the ammunition, like the crossbow bolts, grenades, bullets, or elixirs, I found myself stuck with them pretty much all the time, so I think there's no point in spending that much on them. We pick up the bomb left for us in the safe and proceed further into the prison premises, sneaking our way through the prison yard to the control room section. I decided to simply avoid any contact with most of the guards by climbing on the pipes and only neutralizing the last two of them so I wouldn't have to deal with them in a moment. We set the bomb and make our escape, proceeding to the next location, which is the downwall sewers. Now we are presented with the plague rats, which don't spare any living or dead being and will eat you if you're not careful enough. Okay, jokes aside, they wouldn't eat you in a single second, and here I even managed to get bitten a few times while I cheesed my way through by standing on the valve. The following section contains some booby traps, and I disarmed them, collecting incendiary bolts from every trap. We reached the next crucial point of the game, that is, getting our personal weapons, a blade and a crossbow, which will serve us for the rest of the game. Here's one spot which I missed during my first couple of playthroughs. Nothing special, yet I do get some coin by finding it. Finally, we escape that place and we are greeted by Samuel, who works for some good people who want very much to meet us. Those people are the ones behind our escape, providing us with the key to our cell and the bomb to blow the door up. At the end of every mission, we are provided with statistics, our killings, the chaos level, and special actions that we took part in, and the objects which were found during the mission. I've decided to trust this Samuel guy, and now we are on our way to the Hound Pits Pub, one of the most aesthetic places in the entire game, and a hideout for us and our allies, where we can rest, buy some ammunition and upgrades, or simply roam around in search of some loot. Now we'll let these two gentlemen present themselves, and I think that they can manage with that just fine.
A true servant of the Empire, like you, until the Lord Regent purged those of us who wouldn't recognize his claim on the throne.
And I'm Lord Trevor Pendleton. I represent the nobility in our little group, but we all act as equals here at the Hound Pits Pub.
This is a momentous occasion, Corvo. I'm going to come out with it. We've been building a coalition of loyalists, aimed at ending the Lord Regent's tyranny and restoring the throne.
At risk of execution, we're committed to finding young Lady Emily and seeing her crowned as Empress.
We've got big plans, but we can't do any of it without you. We need your skills, your ability in a fight, and in helping us, we're going to help you destroy the men who murdered the Empress.
Sorry, you must be exhausted. We can discuss this further after you've recovered, but before you retire, you should introduce yourself to Piero. He's challenging at times, but his industrious mind buys him that right.
Now, moving on, we meet Piero Joplin, a natural philosopher, an inventor, and overall a pretty handy guy who is about to give us our signature piece of clothing. But first we gotta help the guy by bringing him another whale oil tank. Remember, no dropping. There's not much to the mask apart from the fact that you can purchase an upgrade to the optics, which would allow you to zoom. I used that upgrade only a few times and I wouldn't recommend spending your coin on it unless you've already upgraded everything else you might need. Now I'll just go around and collect some stuff to get an extra coin, and we'll meet some more characters on my way. Basically, every other person in Hound Pits is somewhat of a servant to the guys that we've already spoken to. There's more depth to these characters, yet I won't go any deeper with them just for the sake of saving our time and since I don't really find them that interesting. We go to bed in order to rest before our first chill mission, but I guess Corvo can't even have that in his life, waking up in the middle of nowhere. Literally. We'll wake up and leave our room and find ourselves in a place called the Void, and in a second we are going to meet one of the most mysterious characters of this world. So this emo guy's name is the Outsider. We are not given any background info on him, so this will do for now. Oh, and also we can teleport now, which is probably one of the best things about the gameplay of this game. Apart from giving us a cool tattoo and an ability to teleport, the Outsider also gives us another bar to worry about, which is shown next to our health bar. It represents our mana, which can be restored by drinking Pierre's elixir. By the way, you can carry the maximum amount of 10 of these elixirs at once, and the same goes for the Sokolov's health elixirs. Using another item which was given to us, the heart, we locate the rune, and from now on we are able to use it to locate runes and bone charms in every mission and location of the game. The rune and the bone charm locations are always the same in every playthrough, yet the bone charm stats are random every time. Runes allow you to upgrade or purchase new magical abilities, the list of which you can see right now on the screen. Each ability has several levels, yet unfortunately most of them are pretty useless if you decide to go with a non-lethal and stealth approach. First thing that you should consider purchasing is the dark vision, which basically works like a wall hack, allowing you to see living beings in the nearest proximity. Level 2 of this power is also worth getting, as it will highlight any pickable loot through the walls. But for now we can't really upgrade or purchase anything, yet the first thing that I personally like to upgrade is the blink, since the level 2 blink allows you to teleport at really far distances, which will ease your navigation through every mission by a lot.
How you use what I have given you falls upon you, as it has to the others before you. And now I return you to your world, but know that I will be watching with great interest.
And now please forget everything that you've seen in the past 5 minutes or so, since all of it was just a dream. Or was it? Well, unlike all of us who wake up from that cool dream and feel disappointed in life since it was only that, a dream, Corvo not only wakes up with a badass tattoo, but is also celebrating Christmas in his room. Speaking of the bone charms, I find no use in most of them since most of them are only applicable in non-stealth combat scenarios, yet I do equip some of them which are more or less useful. Now it's time to talk to Admiral Smallhead and get some ammo and upgrades from Piero. Oh, and one more thing, remember that heart thingy that was given to us by the outsider? As it turns out, there's a rune hidden somewhere around here, so let's get to business. On our way we're stopped by Callista, a niece of Geoff Carno, who is also one of the allies, and we are asked to help the guy escape, which we will further in our playthrough. But for now, the rune, and then we can set off. And just for your knowledge, Samuel is going to take us on and from every mission, with him giving us some insight on the place we're about to penetrate. I work my way through the location, collecting the bone charm on the way and stopping by at Granny Rags's place. An old harmless lady at first sight, but as the outsider hints us,
Be careful, Corvo. They call her Granny Rags. You wouldn't recognize her real name, or even the name of her family, but an emperor begged for her hand once, and rich young men fought each other for her favor. I watched her consider them all, measure their worth, and find them wanting. Then, she made a different choice.
she's not that simple. By the way, this place is called the Shrine of the Outsider, built by some of his followers and usually containing a single collectible rune, with the outsider himself coming to speak with us each time we pick a rune from every shrine. We deal with the bandits and earn another rune from Granny Rags, with her asking for another favor, and if you decide to complete it, you'll have to deal with some consequences, which you'll see in my playthrough as I'm too greedy not to get another rune. I blink my way through the place to Clavering Boulevard, where we've got to enter Dr. Galvani's office in order to get some rat intestines that we'll use to spice up the elixir that one of the gangs is cooking. On our way back, I save a guy from 2 bandits, and it turns out that the guy's name is Griff, and now we can use his shop to purchase some blueprints and consumables, yet I must warn you, you're paying 5 times the price of these items by getting them from him. We proceed to the whiskey distillery and locate the still, infecting it with the rat insides that we've picked earlier from the lab. Granny keeps her promises, and we get another rune, and now it's time to collect the final one in this part of the mission and proceed further to the next location, the High Overseer's office. First of all, we've got to save Overseer Martin, another ally who is going to return to the Hound Pits Pub and work with the rest. Now, you'll get a prompt suggesting that there are many ways of playing this location out, and it is true. In fact, the first thing that I'm going to do is get some loot from the hidden storage of the High Overseer, evading and neutralizing some guards and hounds on the way. Now for the High Overseer. As I've mentioned before, there's always a non-lethal way of neutralizing the target, and this time we're going to use the Heretics brand on the High Overseer, thus taking him away from his position in the government. The High Overseer had set up a meeting with Geoff Carno, who we are supposed to save by bringing him back to the Hound Pits. Campbell plans to poison Carno, but we're going to interrupt his plan and put both of these guys to sleep, branding the High Overseer and saving Carno by putting him into the dumpster for some other guy to come and take him from there, I guess. Once we leave through the backyard, we can save 2 civilians, with one of them being called a witch, either killing the guards or neutralizing both of them. In turn, these guys give us a code to the safe, which is located further down our way. On my way to the safe, I take a little detour to collect a bone charm, which turns out to be somewhat useful. We also stop by the workshop, where we collect the last 7 7th rune of the mission and some other loot. Moving on to the safe, allocate it and use the combination which was told to us earlier. We return to Samuel and get the stats on the mission. Basically, my objective is to keep the chaos level low and to collect as many runes, amulets, shrines and Sokolov paintings as possible, so in this playthrough I don't care that much about getting the ghost rating and keeping the kill count at 0. We return to the Hound Pits and are greeted by Callista, who thanks us for saving his uncle and gives us 100 coin. At this point, I've saved up 4 runes and decided to purchase a skill of possession, which will allow me to possess living beings like rats and fish. No people for now. I stop by Piero and buy some sleep darts and an upgrade to the bone charm capacity. I also give another go on looting the location, as some more items have appeared since our last stay here. Hemlock asks us to look into strange noises in the sewers, and this is how we meet the Weepers for the first time. Basically, Weepers are either zombies or simply infected, the people who suffer from the late stages of plague and live their last days for the sole purpose of attacking anyone they see to infect them. We are generously paid with 2 more runes, which I'll save for now, and we return back to Hemlock and Martin, who we'd saved earlier. They brief us on our next mission of saving Emily from the bathhouse called the Golden Cat. On our way to Samuel, Pendleton stops us to give us a little more insight into the lives of his brothers, who we're supposed to eliminate, so the younger brother would take their place in the parliament. We once again sail to the distillery district, with some changes to the place in the form of watchtowers, which basically act like turrets, attacking every enemy they spot using their light. The easiest way to disable them is to blink to the top and to take out the oil tank which powers them. Your other option would be to use the rewiring tool, which would turn the tower to your side, with the tower starting to shoot at every guard it sees. Samuel tells us about the Bottle Street gang with their leader Slag Joe. We haven't met him yet, but he'll be of use for us during the mission. Remember the time I said that we'll have to deal with the consequences of poisoning the gang's elixir manufacturing with rats' intestines? Well, this is the time that we do. We'll get to that in a moment. For now, we proceed through the location, stumbling upon some of those enemies that look just like the guys who attacked the Empress during the prologue. They have powers similar to ours, can teleport and also use crossbows to attack you at long range. The best option is to sneak up on them and either kill or choke them. I stop by Griff just to check if he has anything worth getting and move on to the distillery. Here we can see that some of the gang members were infected and are kept in cells, living their last days as Weepers. We meet Slag Joe, who asks us for a favor. In turn, he promises to deal with the Pendleton brothers, which is the non-lethal option of eliminating them in this mission. Of course, you can always simply get them with a good old blade, but I'll go with the Slag Joe option. First, we gotta get to Dr. Galvani's lab, which is a familiar place for us by now, but on the way there, I decide to save some gang members from their buddies, who had also turned into Weepers. I make my way into the lab, get rid of some guards, and collect the recording of one of these Slag Joe's dead guys that we'll have to get back to him to proceed with the non-lethal approach to the mission. Also, there is a rune here, which I also pick up on the way. We get back to Slag Joe and pass him the recording, with him giving us the next part of the quest, which involves getting a safe code from some arts dealer who is currently staying at the Golden Cat. We make our way back to the distillery district and proceed further through the location, killing some Reapers on the way, turning off a watchtower, and picking up another bone charm. And just like that, we've made it to the Golden Cat. The location may seem confusing, and it certainly did to me during my first playthrough, so my advice is to take it slow and use the environment to your advantage. The location has several runes, some easier to collect than others, but first things first, I'm going to free Emily from the room she's been held hostage in. Corvo's daughter makes her way outside the building, and you don't really have to worry about her, as there will be no guards in her way. I loot the place, collect some valuables, runes and bone charms, and we finally make it to the arts dealer. Now, this set was really unique to me when I saw it for the first time. You see, we find the guy who has the safe combination sitting in an electric chair, certainly waiting for someone. So just pull on the lever several times, and eventually the guy realizes that we are not the person he was waiting for. After another round of shock therapy, he finally tells us the safe combination, and now we can leave the place, following Emily to the VIP exit by taking the stairs to the first floor. From this point on, Emily makes her way to Samuel on her own, and we don't have to worry about her anymore. Once again, we meet Granny Rags, but this time she's of no interest to us. But if you're sick to the bone, you could try killing her and seeing what happens then. As for me, I plan to take a detour to the arts dealer's apartment myself before I give the safe combination to Slagjaw. In order to do that, we have to find some girl who's being threatened by the guards and save her. In return, she gives us the key to the arts dealer's place, and we can come back and enter through the door located next to Griff. In the arts dealer's apartment, there are several bandits who are scavenging the place, with 2 of them trying to pry open the safe that I would really like to loot. I deal with all the bandits, taking some paintings on the way, and finally loot the safe using the combination that we got from that guy. We make our way back to Slackjaw, giving him the combination to the safe we just looted ourselves, but how would he know that, right? And just like that, we've dealt with the Pendleton brothers without ever coming close to them, and now we can come back to Samuel and Emily who are waiting for us in the boat. Low Chaos, every rune, Bone Charm, and Sokolov's paintings were found and collected, which is a win in my book. We are greeted by Callista once we arrive, with her taking Emily on a tour around the place. Hemlock shakes our hand and tells us to speak to Lord Pendleton, who in turn tells us to speak to Hemlock again. I stop by Piero's place to get some ammo and upgrades, and I turn to Hemlock and Martin, who are discussing our next move. These guys flex on us by sitting on literal air and tell us that the next move is to capture and bring Anton Sokolov, the head of the Academy of Natural Philosophy and an ex-royal physician, to the Empress. With his help, we'll be able to locate the mistress of the Lord Regent, who is our primary objective. Now it's time to head to the Kaldwin's bridge, so we set off with Samuel once again. Samuel gives us some insight on the place, with one of the objectives being shutting off the lights on the bridge. Then we'll have to locate and capture Sokolov, who is assumed to be staying at his apartment at the moment. Our first stop is at an electric cart, which is powered by an oil tank. Using the cart to advance through the first location, I blink out from it to a lamppost in order to get to the rune hidden in one of the apartments. We move on to the next location, and my best option here is just to wait and listen so these two would go their ways. As soon as they finish the conversation, we can neutralize the guy who owns this house and enter it. On my way up the stairs, I also memorize the numbers on the paintings, as these numbers serve as a combination to a safe with the rune inside of it. We advance further and find another outsider shrine. This time the outsider shares his thoughts on Anton Sokolov, who we aim to capture.
Times, and eventually all bridges tumble down. 1,000 years ago there was another city on this spot. The people carved the bones of whales into runes and inscribed them with my mark. Children still find them washed up in the river mud. Anton Sokolov has made a great study of my runes, but he's not special like you are. He wasn't chosen and he doesn't wear my mark, so he can't unlock their secrets. Sokolov believes there are specific words and acts that can compel me to appear before him. He searches old temples in Pendicia and ruined sub-basements in the flooded district. He performs disgusting rituals beneath the old abbey. But if he really wants to meet me, he could start by being a bit more interesting.
During the following sequence, I've learned to skip pretty much every guard on the way by blinking to one of the bridge's supports and using it as a ladder to get higher up. At the top floor, we neutralize the only guard who's in our way and pull the switch which rises the entire bridge, allowing us to have an easier access to the oil tanks that power the lights which prevent Samuel from coming closer to us. I deal with some bandits on the way, looting the apartment they were staying in, and advance further. We've got another rune right as we load into this part of location, and there's also a little side quest with saving a lady from the rats. I get rid of the rats, collect a bone charm which lies next to a deceased person, and move on. Now for the final part of the mission, the north side bridgeway. There is a half-destroyed building in the middle of the location with several civilians being held hostage. By saving these guys, you'll be granted a combination to a safe, which is located right above the place they were kept hostage in. I didn't really feel like bothering with that, so instead I went straight for Sokolov, saving a lady who is his test subject and looting the floor below. Now, all we've got to do is carry Sokolov away to Samuel, who is already waiting for us in his boat. This time I've got both checkmarks of not killing anyone and never getting detected. Samuel, Sokolov and I return to the Hound Pits Pub, and we are greeted by Hemlock right at the dock. I stroll around the place for a while, looting some stuff and getting possibly the best upgrade there is in the game, Silent Shoes. Basically, from now on, we can walk and sprint right next to our enemies without them hearing a thing, which will speed things up quite a bit. We go to sleep and are woken up by Emily in the morning. Now, if we go downstairs, we can see a peculiar scene with Piero spying on Callista through the lock. Okay, that out of the way, it's now time to speak to Sokolov, who is being held hostage. As expected, Sokolov doesn't want to speak, and our options are either to threaten him with the rats or get him a fancy drink called King Street Brandy. Conveniently enough, our spying friend Piero is willing to sell a single bottle to us for only 150 coin. We return with the gift, and Sokolov gives away the name of Lord Regent's mistress without a second thought. In the following mission, I won't bother with collecting every rune and amulet. In fact, I think I skipped pretty much every one of them, since by this time I've got all the skills I need upgraded. The beginning of the mission and the view with the clock tower in the back is my personal favorite. favorite. I truly encourage you to play the game by yourself just for this mission alone. The Boyle Mansion itself is also a place that will be roaming around for a while, with many different rooms and several floors for you to explore and loot. The first floor is available to all guests, and as you have seen, I've managed to get myself an invitation. But first let's deal with the letter which Lord Pendleton asked us to give to a person called Lord Show. As it turns out, the letter challenges Lord Show to duel with us on behalf of Lord Pendleton, and we do exactly that. I guess it is fine to use a pistol during the duel, but I wanted to spare the guy and just shot him with a sleep dart instead. Now let us proceed to the Boyle Mansion itself, where we'll have to figure out which one of the 3 Lady Boyles is the one we need to eliminate. I decided to enter the mansion from a balcony, a passage which may not seem that obvious if you're playing the game for the first time, but as it saves me some time, I use it to get straight into one of the Lady Boyle's rooms. Coming down the stairs to the main hall, we meet a guy who says that he's a friend and that the person we aim to eliminate is the lady he loves. He tells us her name, which is Esma, but the color of her dress is still something that we've got to figure out. As it turns out, I've missed one letter while I was roaming around one of the Lady Boyle's rooms, and so I've got to come back. We learned that Esma wears black tonight, and we asked her to come with us. Now, the color of the dress of the right person during this mission is always random, so if you're going with this stealth approach, you'd still need to look for hints in the rooms upstairs. Your other option could always be simply killing every one of them if you decide to, of course. Esma brings us to her room, telling us that we couldn't imagine who she was seeing, hinting that the person is someone pretty well known. Of course, we know by now that the person is Lord Regent, and having neutralized Esma, we bring her to the cellar to her new husband. Looking back at the whole thing, the guy gives off a really weird vibe, and the whole thing is basically us participating in a kidnapping, and I can't tell what's worse, simply putting her out of her misery or leaving her to this cycle. Alright, Esma out of the way, we swim back to Samuel, who is waiting for us at the same spot. We return to the Hound Pits once again, this time without anyone meeting us right away. Lord Pendleton gives us a rune, and we also get one as a gift from one of Lady Boyle's as a sign of gratitude for getting rid of their sister. We participate in a briefing for the next mission, which is eliminating the Lord Regent. The mission may sound difficult, and in fact if you decide to explore the entire location you may struggle a bit, especially if you play for the first time. But by this time you've probably collected enough runes and skills to manage just fine. As for me, I won't be collecting any runes or amulets in this mission, and probably in the upcoming missions as well. So what you're about to witness right now is my 6-minute speedrun of this mission, with me skipping most of the enemies without being noticed once. First you've got to get up the water elevator, which is not functioning for obvious reasons. And yeah, this is the exact location from the prologue, but with us actually being able to explore the entire place. Nevertheless, my sole personal objective for this one is to neutralize the Lord Regent without killing him, or in fact, even coming near him. I go through the left part of the location, stumbling upon some worker who's not hostile to us and who recognizes who we are, and we finally make it to the Dunwall Tower. I immediately turn right and blink to a chandelier which brings me to the stairs that lead to the broadcasting room. There's an arc pylon which blocks us from simply walking up the stairs, so I use one of my skills which allows me to fully stop the time, and I take out the oil tank which is powering this thing. With that out of the way, we simply make our way to the top and are greeted by the guy who we've been hearing in all the city announcements. He gives us some crucial info on the Lord Regent's safe, hinting that there is some material that would discredit him completely. And just like that, we've gotten rid of the Lord Regent and can get back to Samuel.
Beg for the coin for which the rest of us toil. And it was a simple plan. Bring the disease bearing rats from the Pandician continent.
I stop time once more and simply blink my way out, making a fabulous jump at the end. We come back to the Hound Pits Pub with Samuel telling us that everyone's waiting for us to celebrate, as the Lord Regent has lost his power and everything's about to change. And it is. Perhaps not for the better, at least in our case.
Tomorrow, Emily will be on the throne. After that, we'll clear your name and put everything we've got into rebuilding the city.
I wish there were more of a city to rule. Most of Dunwall is rats and corpses.
The Admiral's right, I'm afraid. Corvo, you did your job while the rest of us sat on our asses. Our work starts tomorrow.
Tonight, rest easy. Tomorrow, we crown an empress. To Corvo, the man who served to change the course of history.
To Emily Kaldwin, and the new dawn rising for Dunwall and the Empire.
The music itself during the celebration sort of suggests that the events are about to take an unpleasant turn, with us feeling dizzy on our way to the bed. Corvo wakes up mid-conversation between Pendleton and Hemlock, overhearing their plans of quote-unquote showing the world the murderer of the Empress and being greeted as heroes. Fortunately enough, our good old friend Samuel stops by saying that he was forced into poisoning Corvo's drink, but he only gave us half the dose of the poison and that will probably live. Samuel sends us off on a raft and we become conscious in the flooded district. To our luck, we've been spotted by some assassins who bring us to their leader, the man named Dowd. Now, if his face looked familiar, it's because Dowd is the guy who actually killed the Empress Jessamine, as he says himself. He gives us some clues that he also bears the mark of the outsider and possesses magic skills, just as he throws our gear away.
Here you are at last, in a ruined and drowning world, held captive by the man who killed your Empress, the assassin Dowd. Your friends poisoned you and dumped your body in the river. Did they do it to protect themselves, so no one would ever know what they'd done? Or was it because they were a single move away from controlling an empire, and they knew you'd never let them manipulate Emily? Maybe none of these. Perhaps that's just the nature of man.
We wake up once again, this time in some other place. Now it is our time to escape, get our gear back, and pay those bastards back for what they've done to us and Emily. But first we've got to escape the flooded district, a place crawling with assassins, sweepers, and river crusts, all of which will try to stop us on our way. I get in a little fight with the two assassins who are on my way to the outside, but manage to deal with them without bloodshed. On my way to restoring the gear, I find one of the most useful bone charms in the game, which increases our amount of mana. Now, here we are supposed to use an oil tank to power some mechanism which would allow us to go further, but I cheese my way through by upgrading to a double jump and using blink to reach high surfaces. And just like that, we are nearly there. But before we can enter the building with our gear inside, some assassins teleport to the balcony and we overhear their conversation about us.
Rooftops. All right. If nothing else, we can cut him off at the market.
He can't get through the rail station without the key.
This one is resourceful. He'll find a way.
All of them leave and we come inside, getting back what is ours and leaving on our way to Dowd, who's got the key that we need to escape the place. I take down some assassins on my way to him and even managed to steal his key and his bone charm without him even noticing it. I decided to spare Dowd and just moved on. While on the way to the tunnel entrance, you can notice that during my stop time activation, Dowd keeps on talking. That is because he, as I've said before, bears the same mark that we do and he cannot be affected by the powers of the outsider. Or at least that's how I think it is. Using the Dowd's key, I also loot some of his chests on my way down to the tunnel, eventually leaving that place. The following location can be a pain in the ass when you play it for the first time, since it is basically an open space with tall boys and guards roaming around, but as you can see there's also a railway with a train coming back and forth dropping the bodies right at the spot where we've exited the tunnels. So I hop on the train without a second thought and basically skip the entire location. Now the only place that's standing between us and the Hound Pits is the sewers, but the door seems to be locked, and based on some info from a bandit from the Slackjaw's gang, Slackjaw is the one who's got the key, so we've got to find them if we want to go to the sewers. We advance through some rundown and semi-drowned buildings and stumble upon Granny Rags, who asks us to basically help her cook a stew out of Slackjaw. I mean, the guy doesn't look that skinny, so perhaps he would make a solid meal, but I decide to help him, and in order to do that, we've got to defeat Granny Rags. So we do exactly that by taking Granny's cameo, placing it in the furnace and burning it to a crisp, rendering that old witch without her black magic powers. Not the only thing that's left to do is to put her to sleep and free Slackjaw from shackles. On our way out of Granny Rags' hideout, we stumble upon another shrine of the outsider, with the guy giving us another speech about our actions and the actions of our past allies.
Interesting places, Corvo. At the eye of the storm, raging between Granny Rags and this man who has lived his whole life with a cleaver in one hand and a bottle in the other. Crawling out of those flooded ruins, winding your way back to the pub where you last saw Emily. Where is she now? How does it feel now, knowing your allies betrayed you? Strange how there's always a little more innocence left to lose. And Dowd, the man who killed the Empress. You had him in the palm of your hand, and you let him walk away? You fascinate me.
And if you ever wondered how it would probably feel to be flushed down a toilet, I've got you covered. We fight our way through some more crusts and finally reach the Hound Pits Pub, with Cecilia being the first person we see here. Advancing further through the place that we all know by now, we see that it's crawling with guards and a couple of tall boys, with what it seems like none of our past allies being left here. Yet some of them do, and the ones that did stay are probably the best people to meet in such circumstances, because now we've got Piero and Anton, who, as I say, have been working on an arc pylon that'll be able to either turn every enemy to ashes or render all of them unconscious. I will go with the non-lethal option and help them power the thing. As a result, now we can freely roam around the place like in the good old days. We find a letter from Emily in our room in which she tells us the place she'd been taken to, King Sparrow Island, our final destination. Before we go though, I decide to explore the place for some time, and unfortunately it turns out that not everyone's made it alive. We find Wallace's body lying outside with a note from Lord Pendleton, who basically lies to him on the reason for their departure, leaving the guy clueless of what was coming. I decide to spend the money that I've collected thus far by upgrading my pistol and stocking up on ammunition. We send a signal to Samuel and finally set off on our last mission to King Sparrow Island. Since I've kept low chaos through the entire playthrough, we get the low chaos version of this location with the sun shining bright and the whole place looking somewhat welcoming, apart from the watchtowers and a literal army of guards that is. We disable the wall of light and proceed to the King Sparrow fort. Now I yet again decide to skip all the guards by taking a way similar to the one during the Sokolov capturing mission, but please do not think wrong of this mission, as some side objectives include dealing with Pendleton and Martin. So during your personal playthrough, I highly suggest you exploring the place for more than a minute and actually giving those objectives a shot. As for me, I've already made it to the elevator and now we're just a few moments away from meeting Admiral Hemlock, who will fall to my sleeping dart just like everyone else did. We take the key from the table and free Emily, getting the best ending as a result, with a bright future ahead for the Isles under the rule of Empress Emily Kaldwin with Corvo Tano by her side.
Will I be Empress?
So ends the interregnum, and now Emily Kaldwin I will take her mother's throne after a season of turmoil. You will stand at her side, Corvo, guiding her young mind and protecting her from those who seek to exploit her or cause her harm. You watched and listened when other men would have shouted in rage. You held back instead of striking. So it is, with the passing of the plague and Emily's ascension, comes a golden age, brought about by your hand. And decades hence, when your hair turns white and you pass from this world, Empress Emily, Emily the Wise, at the height of her power, will lay your body down within her mother's great tomb, because you are more to her than royal protector. Farewell, Corvo.
And now for my personal thoughts on the game. What can I say? At this point I've stopped counting the amount of times I've replayed it, and yet it manages to captivate me with the entire atmosphere, its mystery, the gameplay and its plot. It's pretty difficult for me to criticize this game since I've simply played it for too many times to notice anything worth critiquing. I guess one aspect of the gameplay which definitely has its flaws is the game's economics. Now, I guess this critique only applies to a stealth and non-lethal playstyle, as I understand that you will have to spend more on ammo like crossbow bolts and bullets and on upgrades for your weaponry, but basically if you you choose to play the game sparing everyone, you'll find yourself only spending money on sleep darts and health and mana potions, because you won't find any use in any of the upgrades for lethal weaponry for obvious reasons. The same applies to the magic skills. There are only a few of them which can be found useful in a stealth and non-lethal playstyle, which are the blink, the dark vision, possession, time bending, and the agility skills, I guess, which are not even magic. And this is not good for a game which has stealth as a part of its genre and gameplay mechanics, since some players may never even get to experience some of the most fun mechanics and approaches to completing the missions, because let's be real, there are not that many people who are ready to replay the game for a second time, and I'm not even talking about replaying it for the third or the fourth time. Keeping all of that in mind, I think that if you really want to get the full Dishonored experience with various unique combat scenarios, you should definitely consider playing the game in a lethal way for your first playthrough. Speaking about this whole video, at first I had somewhat of a different idea on how I want to approach my review of this game, but I find myself simply playing the game in the process of writing this script and decided to record the whole thing. Even though I haven't even started recording the voiceover for this gameplay, I can guess that I'll have to cut it a lot since the script turns out to be around 12 pages long, which pretty much renders the video to be around 40 minutes or so. Depending on my mood and the amount of free time that I'll have in the near future, I might do a similar video on the two DLCs of the first Dishonored, since I really enjoy both of them as well, even though I know a lot less about the locations present in both of them. I might try some different approach to making that video without basically retelling the whole plot and focusing more on the gameplay aspects and my personal thoughts. But for now, I guess that's it.